Today we are going to begin the Ancient Greece unit of study. The first lesson that we are going to cover in the Ancient Greece unit of study is Ancient Greece Vocab. Before we begin with Ancient Greece Vocab, let's talk about where we have been in first semester and where we start in second semester in. So you had the United States right here. You go across the Atlantic Ocean. We started our school year in the Mesopotamia region, Iraq, Syria, Turkey. Then we went on to Egypt. We went across to India. We went to China and Japan. Now we're going to more areas that we're more familiar with, the European areas. We're going over and we're going to this area next. This area is known as Greece. Greece hangs down into the Mediterranean Sea. We will spend a bulk of the next few months in this area right here. Okay, so we're going to spend a bulk of the time over the next few months in this area. So, now that you know where Greece is located at, let's begin with the first vocab word for today. The first main vocab word for the Ancient Greece unit study is Acropolis. Acropolis is a large hill which the Greeks built their city-states around. They would find the large hills in the city-state when they were found in the city-state, and they would find the peak of the largest hill. Wherever the peak of the largest hill was, that would be where they would put their most important buildings in the city-state. Then in the valleys of the hills, or in the bottom areas of the hills, was usually where the people would live. So the highest points of the hill would be where the large buildings were at. The valleys would usually be where the people lived on the hills. Let's move on to Agora. Agora is a place where the Greeks met to conduct business. Now this was a large column-sided building. It was open. Everybody would come there from the city-state, and if you had business, you would basically travel along or travel inside the Agora and talk to each person you need to in the Agora. Now there were some positives and there were some negatives. You could get all your business done in one spot. The negative was that every little person would hear your business. Okay? It's just like rumors being spread across schools. You don't want every little person hearing what you have to say to a friend, because if a person hears you, then they're going to spread it in their own way, and they're going to make it up the way they want to. That was the problem with the Agora. People would hear it and make it up the way they wanted to, but more times than not in the Agora, it was a very friendly, very business-like approach. It was very trustworthy. People, unless they extremely didn't like you, they would allow you to do business and not spread what you were trying to do. An Agora and assembly are very similar. An Agora was a place where people conducted business, and an assembly was a place where people voted on issues. Now, what happened with an assembly was that they didn't have a polling place. They didn't have a cloth where you pulled it and you voted on a paper ballot or you voted on a computer. The way assembly worked was basically they said the candidate's name and you either said yay or you raised your hand. Each city-state did it differently. It wasn't very discreet. It was very publicly, people knew who you voted for because the assembly was very open. So let's move on. Citizen. A citizen is a person who has certain rights and responsibility to his or her country and or city-state in the form of Greece. The main right and responsibility that a citizen has is the right to vote. Okay, that is the main right and responsibility that a citizen has. If they don't do anything else, they vote. Let's move on to colony. Colony is a group of people who live apart from Greece but kept economic ties to it. Okay, this is Greece right here. You can barely see it, but you can see it on your map that you have in the classroom. There are a series of islands off the coast of Greece, Crete, and some other islands that are right off the coast. The colonies referring to those islands is people who lived apart from Greece but kept money and business ties with Greece. They didn't want to lose their money, so they kept the business and the money ties with Greece. Let's move on to democracy. Democracy is a form of government where people vote to make decisions. The key word is people vote to make decisions. Here in the United States, The main form of government that we have here in the United States is democracy. We try to influence on the rest of the world that we want them to adapt to our form of democracy or some form of democracy. That's where a form of detentions kind of lie. So, what is democracy? It's a form of government where people vote to make decisions. Don't get it confused with another word that's coming up. You'll know here in just a second what that word is. Let's move on to helots. Helots are people that were captured by Sparta and forced to live as a slave. We'll talk about them here a little bit later on in our unit. Monarchy. Monarchy is a government led by one ruler, usually a king or a queen. Now, a few city-states used a monarchy, but monarchy really didn't grab hold until the Middle Ages, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the school year. But monarchy a few city-states did use it, but it really didn't full throttle grab hold until the Middle Ages. Let's move on to oligarchy. Oligarchy is a government run by a small group of people. This group of people usually has a lot of money, a lot of power, a lot of influence. It is a small group of people, 5, 10, 15, 20. It's usually no more than 20 though. But an oligarchy is a government run by a small group of people. Republic. This is the word that I did not want you to get it confused with democracy. And democracy is a government in which citizens vote for their leaders. Republic is a government in which citizens choose their leaders. Basically what happens is with a democracy you have a whole list of people who you can vote for. Republic, you basically say, this is the person we want, let's put them in this position. And there's not really any ifs, ands, or buts about it. Let's move on to trireme. Trireme is a sailing vessel powered by 3 levels of oarsmen. We'll talk about trireme a little bit later on when we're talking about the most famous war in the ancient Greek era. So we'll talk about that more during that time. So today we have talked about some of the most famous types of government in Greece and throughout the world. Democracy, republic, oligarchy, monarchy. We talked about Acropolis, Agora, and Assembly, how they all three relate to each other. We had talked about helots, colonies, and citizens, and that the main right of a citizen is to vote. This ends the Ancient Greece vocab lesson for today.